What is up, gamers? It is Chongo here, and today I've got a commentary on what makes a game great. Now, there are lots of different aspects, I believe, that, attract people to games and make them want to continue playing them. Number one is graphics. In my opinion, graphics aren't really that high up. Like, I don't mind if the graphics aren't that bad, but I do like some graphics. I don't really like text-based games and all that kind of stuff. And graphics in most games seem to be like a bonus to a really good game. People don't say, "Well, that game's got good graphics," and buy it just for that sole reason. I mean, it's something that adds on to everything else. It's not really a selling point of a game. Now, the next aspect I find relates to me quite a bit is if the game is complex enough or not. Like, for example, some gamers prefer a challenge, whereas others would not want to go and play a game like Dark Souls, which is a really, really hard game. I myself would not want to go and play a really, really hard game. I like them to be easy enough that they're enjoyable, but not easy enough that you feel like you're a little kid. Like, I don't want to play a game where everything's auto-controlled for me and, like, auto-aiming and all that kind of stuff. I prefer to do stuff my own way. But, yeah, I don't want it to be too hard to the point that it's not that fun. The next aspect, I feel, is originality. Like, I'm not saying that you're not going to buy sequels just because they're too similar to previous games, but just the fact that if it feels like too similar to another game that you've already played and clocked up a lot of hours in, you're going to be less likely to continue wanting to play this game or even wanting the game because you say, "Oh no, that game feels way too much like this one." I'm not saying every time a game is being made they need to start completely from scratch. I'm just saying that it needs to have enough new features to still feel original or have those original elements that are like completely new. The next aspect is content. Like, now it seems to be game developers are seeming to be forced into putting multiplayer in single player games. Like, I know Mass Effect 3 is going to have a multiplayer aspect to it. I don't know if that's because of this, but it's almost as if, it's almost seen if you're paying 100 or however much you're paying for a game, that you want more than just one thing. But in saying that, there's some games that I don't think will ever have multiplayer, for example, like Skyrim. Like, that is just a fine single player game and does not need any other content to it. But since it doesn't have a multiplayer aspect or a co-op aspect or anything like that, it makes up for it in the actual length of the game. But a game like Gears of War, for example, when it first started out, it just started with campaign and multiplayer. And now it's progressed in Gears of War 3 to campaign, multiplayer, beast mode, horde, and all these other separate things. And I think it's sort of like people are starting to expect a lot more from developers since they're realizing that it's not like that hard to not copy and paste, but take what they've done and slightly modify it to make it a little bit newer. So they've decided and thought that it's a lot better to get a bit more in the game. This brings me to the next aspect, which is size. Now, this mostly only applies to single player or free roam games. You want a game to be massive if you're going to be only playing single player or whatnot. And one game, like, even though it did have multiplayer, this is where it sort of fell down, was Red Dead Redemption. I found with multiplayer free roam, although you had the whole single player world to explore, you couldn't really do much. You could go to the hideouts and that kind of stuff and like take on gangs, but other than that, you sort of felt like you're a bit gypped, and it got a little bit boring really, really fast because you had to sit there and try and come up with your own sort of fun things. And I sort of think that in that sense, a game still needs to be big, but it still needs to have structure, otherwise it sort of fails. Now, the next aspect that I think is one of the most important ones, and it's replayability. No matter how good anything else is about the game, if you can't replay it, it sort of falls down. Now, good examples of games are like COD. Once you beat the storyline, that kind of stuff, you don't really want to touch that again, but multiplayer-wise, it is a strong game, and you will continue to play it for a very long time if you're into that sort of game. Now, other games like Skyrim and Oblivion, I've had my friends talk about playing it like on multiple playthroughs just to go and try all out different classes, doing all the other side quests and that kind of stuff. Now, an example of a game that I found was quite bad with replayability was Fable 2. I bought that game, and then within a week, this wasn't even straight playing, this was just playing on and off, I had finished it completely, and I had no intention of going back and playing through it again. And most of the ways that multiplayer games stay like replayable is usually by having unlocks. One thing that could be done to increase the replayability of certain multiplayer games is they could have unlocks or DLC on the disc but not charge for it, and wait like a couple months to release it so that people still want to play it afterwards because new stuff's come out, even because they couldn't unlock it in the first place. Another aspect that is overlooked quite frequently is competition. If a game is released in the other time of another massive game, it usually can get quite overlooked and not get the sales it should just because of where it's been placed. Thanks for watching this commentary. It's wrapping up, and please leave a comment below on what you think makes a good game. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe if you want to see more.